This is TWiT.
We've been bringing in a guest every week to talk about all things AI, and I am thrilled to get this guest. Keach Hagey is a reporter for the Wall Street Journal. It's good to see you, Keach.
Good to see you.
She has written a book which comes out not till May 20th called The Optimist.
But pre-order it now, everybody. Pre-order it now.
But you will want to, because it's Sam Altman, OpenAI, and the race to invent the future. The first full-length biography of Sam Altman. Keach, welcome to Intelligent Machines. It's great to have you.
Thanks for having me.
You say in the introduction, because Sam, I don't know, Sam at first was reluctant to have a book about him.
Yeah.
I think he kind of helped you towards eventually, right? He wasn't. It's not an unauthorized biography, but you said, I don't care if you don't help me because my last book was about Sumner Redstone, a guy who was basically in a coma the whole time. So is there any comparison between Sumner Redstone and Sam Altman? Or they seem like antithetical creatures?
Well, actually, there are. I've thought about this a little bit, because everyone always asks me, like, what does Sam really want? Does he really want money? Is he motivated by money? And the thing about Sumner Redstone is he's motivated by money, but he's motivated by winning. Winning, right? The conquest. And I don't think Sam is quite motivated by winning in the same way, but he is motivated by building. So I think that they're similar in that way.
You say in the beginning that Sam doesn't need money. That one of the reasons Sam could take this job and tell the board, I'm not going to have any stake, any equity, which was a condition of him being on the board of the nonprofit. But he could do that because he was already a billionaire.
Yeah. So what Sam really is an investor. He is a brilliant investor, and he made a ton of money being head of Y Combinator and then personally investing in all kinds of moonshot startups, sort of on the side through his own venture funds, which he continues to do, although much less than he used to. So he made his money before he really ever became CEO of OpenAI.
And Jeff and Richard, please don't let me hog Keach on this, because I know you all have things to ask. But the thing that brought our attention to you, Keach, was the excerpt published last week in the Wall Street Journal from your book, The Optimist, which tells the behind-the-scenes story. Jeff asked me last week, we had Gary Rivlin on, who has a book called AI Valley about AI and talks a lot about Sam Altman. And Jeff said, now, did he reveal what happened behind the scenes when Altman was fired? And I said, not really. Well, guess who did? Great reporting on this.
Really, Leo sent me the excerpt from the journal on the weekend when I was out shopping, and I immediately went back. Can we get Keach on now, please?
Yeah. Because nobody really knew this. The whole thing. All we knew is the board was so careful about this. They said, well, we just don't have confidence in his candor. We don't feel like he's been fully candid with us, but later they kind of intimated stuff. But this was actually a lot more than I thought. He really did lie to the board a lot.
The combination of things, right? There's I think there are long reasons and there are short reasons why he got fired, why the board decided to fire him. The long reasons are there was a power struggle. And let's put the lying aside for a second. There was a year-long power struggle about who should be on the board. And even though Sam didn't have equity in OpenAI, he had real power, right? He had the de facto power. And so this nonprofit board was realizing that every person they put forward, Sam would reject, and then he would counter with one of his friends, which they felt was, not the kind of thing that allowed them to actually have oversight over him.
The board was really there because it was a nonprofit to protect that mission, right? To protect it from Sam.
Right, and it had this very sort of pie-in-the-sky mission that our duty is not to shareholders, it is to humanity. Now, it's pretty hard to interpret that mission, I would say, but leaving that aside. So there's a power struggle, and then there's a series of things that the board felt that Sam had either omitted things or lied to them about that had to do with safety. A number of safety breaches. There was this deployment safety board that OpenAI and Microsoft put together to sort of review things before they went out, because there was a lot of fear about what these tools could do, right? I mean, that fear is what OpenAI was born out of. And there were several occasions where something bad would happen and Sam wouldn't mention it to the board, or he would tell the board that things had passed it when they had not. So there's that. And then the short reasons, I would say one more big long reason is that there was this OpenAI startup fund that the board believed was like OpenAI's, but in fact they learned that Sam himself owned it personally. And it took them months to actually get that answer out of the executives and Sam. And, they changed the structure once that became public, but they really felt like, whoa, you went before Congress and said you had no financial stake here, and yet you own this little startup fund personally. That's challenging for us.
Yeah.
And so then the short reasons had to do with two executives that came forward not long before he got fired with sort of receipts on what they felt made them lose trust in Sam. And one of them was a board member, Ilya Sutskever, the chief scientist and co-founder, and one of them was the CTO, Mira Murati, who both...
Which is interesting, because she was the replacement for Sam when he was fired as CEO.
And also defended him.
And defended him, yeah.
Yes.
Weird
so
dynamics
weird, right?
there. Yeah.
So weird. So what was really wild, and one of the things that's sort of revealed in that excerpt, is that the journal had reported before that Ilya Sutskever had come forward with a list of dozens of reasons or instances where Sam had either lied or had some toxic behavior, but we never really knew where they came from. But in this excerpt, I report that they mostly came from screenshots of Mira Murati's Slack. So.
Where did he get those? Mira, obviously, right?
Yeah, and Mira talked to the board members who ended up firing Sam at length about a pattern of behavior that she said Sam basically had a two-part playbook. He would either say what he needed to say to get what he wanted, or if that didn't work, he would try to undermine the person. And Mira says that she has given that feedback to Sam directly. So in her mind, it wasn't like some huge revelation. But the board...
She didn't stab him in the back. She stabbed him in the front.
Exactly. There you go. That's what my old journalism mentor used to say. Stab him in the front.
So Mira is a technologist. Ilya is a technologist. They're all high-level technologists. Sam is not, right? So what was their pecking order in their views to him?
So, Sam did study computer science, in college, but you're right that as I write in the book, he's really a fundraiser and a sort of a visionary, right? He is not down there in the weeds running tests of training runs for LLMs at all. So Ilya Sutskever, he is the sort of technical visionary of the company. He's the one thinking about what kind of training runs there should be. And then Mira's running the company day to day, deciding who gets the GPUs. She's totally managing this Microsoft relationship that is the backbone of the company and where all of their computing power comes from. And Mira is the one because she's making the trains run on time and all of that, she is experiencing the chaos when Sam tells two people yes, and that has to somehow be reconciled, right? Or one of her big complaints was about the relationship with Greg Brockman, another OpenAI co-founder, who was on the board and was a really close ally of Sam's, but didn't really have direct reports and would sort of crash into people's projects sometimes. And people would come to Mira and ask her, please get Greg out of my project, or please solve this problem. And then, Greg would go to Sam to make it so that Mira couldn't really exert any power over him. So that became an untenable situation, and it's why Greg Brockman was removed from the board with Sam Altman when the blip happened.
The other big question I have, and I'll show my cards here, I'm not a believer that AGI is going to happen. I follow the writing about TESCREAL and the odd philosophies a lot. And so the definition of safety to me has been mangled, so that when you're talking to somebody, you don't know if it's stochastic parrots present tense safety or if it's TESCREAL 2 centuries ahead safety. So when people talked about safety and OpenAI and that being a key issue that was raised, was the discussion way up in the future clouds, or was it down to earth in terms of what was the definition that people were working with when they were worried about safety in OpenAI and thus Sam?
So that is such a great question. And I also struggle to sort of pin that very thing down because I find it very slippery when you have these conversations, right? You're right. I remember one of the very first interviews I had with Sam, I asked him this question directly. What does AI safety mean to you? And he said it would be, I'm paraphrasing here, but basically it's a world in which things would be better if AI existed than if they hadn't.
Present tense.
Meaning that like the net, sort of like the net of everything is more positive than it is negative. Which I found that a very startling answer. At the time, this is when everyone was really freaked out about existential risk, and something that, Sam was talking a lot about existential risk. But that definition seems more like an economic place that we're landing.
It's also a bit of a Zuckerberg answer in a way. Like,
Yeah.
we're connecting the world and it's all better because of us.
The net is the interesting thing.
Yeah.
Like, there might be some
problems.
hardships along the way, but in the long run,
Yeah.
you actually begin the book with a warning from Peter Thiel to Sam Altman, and this was just a few weeks before Sam was fired. Thiel said, "You got half of your company
Yeah.
is worried about AI." He specifically referred to Eliezer Yudkowsky, who Thiel said became extremely black-pilled and Luddite, and Sam just kind of brushed off Thiel's warning. Thiel said half the company's been taken over by the effective altruists. By the way, there's so much inside baseball here. If you've listened to the show, Jeff's explained this, what TESCREAL means, why effective altruists aren't really altruistic, and a lot more. So there's a lot of shorthand in this. But the EAs, which sounds on the face of it, and this Sam Bankman-Fried was also an EA, sounds on the face of it like, well, what's wrong with that? They want to end global poverty, right?
But as you said, Keach, they changed their views,
Right.
their
Yeah.
goals.
That's right.
What was their new goal?
To prevent existential risk from AI. And
You write, prevent runaway AI from murdering humanity.
Yeah, I mean, this is fascinating calculus, right, in that movement where all of a sudden it's the morally correct thing to do is to think about future humans, not present humans, because there will be so many more future humans. Like, so if you're a utilitarian, the math is such that, I guess, assuming we don't totally destroy the birth rate, there will be more humans in the future, right? So that became a completely different moral universe than, like, I think most of us are used to operating with inside.
Well, it also raises questions about, well, what about current day humans, right?
Right.
Are you not worried about us?
Right. So to answer your question, though, going back to like which version of safety people were worried about, in the board fight, I do think while EA itself was not a driving force, there's this moment when the board got an early peek at GPT-4 before they'd even released ChatGPT. And they got to watch it like pass the AP Bio test. And I think that was a sobering moment for these people who were like, oh, our jobs are actually really important, right? This AGI thing might really be sooner than we think, and our jobs are really important, and the board needs to be functioning well. And so that sort of sense of import of the imminence of AGI and the potential dangers of it, I do think colored how they behaved, because they did not feel like it was okay to have a situation where they felt lied to.
Stephen Wolfram was saying that a couple of weeks ago, that even OpenAI really didn't kind of believe what was going to happen until they saw ChatGPT 4, and then it was,
because this is what OpenAI was formed for, right? They were afraid of what Google Brain was doing and tried to convince all those scientists to go into the open, including Sescovar.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. That's the great irony of it all, right? Is that OpenAI was born from this fear. It was partly a fear of, I think it was less a fear of AI risk. It was ultimately there than a fear of the concentration of power of Google being the one.
Google having brought all the best minds together. So let's go get the best minds for ourselves.
Yeah.
Yes.
Altman responded to Thiel.
When you hook up profits to this technology, that would be like fundamentally problematic, right? Which
Boy, we changed that view.
And of course, that's what happened. And that's one of the reasons the board ousted him, I think, was this move towards making OpenAI for profit, or at least part of OpenAI for profit.
I actually don't think that is totally true. I mean, they'd already started the for-profit like subsidiary of nonprofit, so that had already been sort of cleared. But broadly, were they behaving more and more like a Silicon Valley startup that just needed to ship quickly, keep the momentum, do all the things you have to do, right, to stay alive in a commercial world. Sure. And did that run up
Correct me
against?
if I'm wrong, but weren't they staffed with Silicon Valley startup people?
Yeah, what a surprise.
Well, there's an interesting thing about the tribes inside. Sometimes Sam would describe there being 3 tribes inside OpenAI, and they were really different tribes, right? So there was the sort of academic, the researcher tribe, there's the AI safety tribe, and then there's the policy tribe. And I would say there's also like the startup tribe, and they are often different people. And a lot of the AI safety people really were like people who are close to or involved in effective altruism, or at least the broader, AI safety community. There were just like, that company was full of these people, and a lot of them were freaking out about corners that were cut in safety.
And a lot of them left and went to form Anthropic, right? That was the whole exodus there.
Some of them did, but I guess what I'm talking about is even right before the blip, a bunch of them sort of, after Sam was reinstituted, you saw like departure after departure of people.
Including Mira Murati.
Including Mira, right? But Jan Lakey, who is running the super alignment team with Ilya Sutskever, Ilya left, right? All these people.
Is Brockman still around, or is he on extended leave?
He is around. He is back from leave.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when you say left, did they depart or were they pushed out?
There were a lot of resignations. So they're all resignations, but I think that the company became an unwelcoming place
Hostile. Yeah.
for people for whom this was the top priority.
So, of course, most notable departure was Elon Musk, who co-founded OpenAI and split with Sam. He was very much on the side of the oh my God, AI is going to kill us all. He called it summoning the demon. Weirdly, he's of course started his own AI venture, which is worth now $80 billion thanks to its merger with X. We'll get to that a little later on. He and Sam don't talk, right?
At this stage, I don't
He's suing
so.
them. He's suing
they
Sam.
They are sort of mortal enemies at this point. They started out as really good friends. And they started out having these sort of private dinners together, discussing these apocalyptic ideas, some of which were about AI. But the company was really born out of this panic and fear about existential risk.
Right. You said something in the book that really kind of interested me. Elon has said many times he thinks we're in a simulation. Sam believes that too.
Yeah. Peter Thiel, if you ask Sam about it, he'll say that's freshman dorm room talk, but
Well, it is.
Totally. And the one person who says he believes it is Peter Thiel, actually, who's had this conversation with him, because, Peter Thiel loves to sort of think of these wild ideas.
Right.
But I think what Sam would say is, if you do the logic experiment about is this a simulation or not, you kind of come to the conclusion that it very likely might be or probably is. But he would say you have to live your life as if it's not.
Yeah, well, he's right.
Geez, how Calvinist can you get?
Well, but it also says that superintelligence has been created. That's part of that is, it's happened already. And that's why we're living in a simulation.
So
right?
Speaking of which, as you very wisely asked Sam going in for the definition of safety, have you had a satisfactory definition of AGI or ASI?
It moves.
Oh, yeah.
Right? The definition is, as my understanding is, it can do most tasks better than a human. Some of the best definitions make sure that it is a general intelligence, right? That it's not just about tasks, but that it can range over all types of tasks. So there's a better than a human piece of it, or as well as a human. But no, I would say the company is increasingly open about the fact that nobody really knows what it is, and it's barely definable.
Yeah.
So we can declare its existence when we feel like it?
I'll know it when I see it, Richard.
Yeah.
So it's
kind
pornography.
of, right? Kind of, and of course it's very tricky because Microsoft has this deal with OpenAI where if OpenAI declares AGI, then Microsoft no longer has access to that IP after that point.
Yeah, that's the financial definition.
There's an interesting incentive for you that has nothing to do with a technical measure.
Speaking of Microsoft, tell us about Microsoft's reaction to Sam Altman's firing.
So again, there's like a short and a long one, right?
I want the deets.
We want
Spill the
tea.
Okay, so in the short term, I would say, I think it was very public that Microsoft ran to be publicly supportive of Sam Altman after he was fired, right? There's kind of a funny thing in the book where the board didn't even have immediate plans to tell Microsoft. I think they ultimately would, but when they had this sort of plan, Amira Murati looked at their plan the next day, who they were going to tell. She's like, "Why is tell Microsoft not on here?"
Yeah, kind of big deal.
So eventually, Mira was the one who had to call before even Sam was alerted and say, "This is happening." They had to go pull Kevin Scott out of a meeting and had to tell Satya Nadella that this was going down. So in the short term, Microsoft is super supportive, and they offered OpenAI employees jobs, right? OpenAI basically got Sam back by having almost every employee threaten to quit. And what allowed them to do that is that Microsoft had said, we'll hire all OpenAI employees.
Oh, so that created an outward pressure. Well, I hadn't thought of that before. By Microsoft doing that, Microsoft proved to the board that you could kill the company here.
We went through this on Windows Weekly in pretty good detail because it was the end of the build conference too. So, Nadella had just come off sort of his triumphant week of talking about how everything was going so well. It was on the Thursday he finds out that Sam's gone. And over the weekend, there is much noise. And I think it was by Monday, they basically said, open invitation, every employee can apply to work at Microsoft. We're happy to hire you.
And in fact, 770 employees signed a petition saying, if you don't rehire Sam Altman, we're going to Microsoft.
Yeah. Microsoft had office space at the LinkedIn offices and laptops for them and everything. Yeah, they were ready.
Wow.
I think that's a bit of a stunt, but they swear that was true.
Well, it was surprising to me because I didn't get the impression leading up to that point that there was this, universal support for Sam Altman in the company, in OpenAI.
Well, there was universal support for the tender offer that he was organizing.
Oh, it was a profit deal.
Yeah. So the key thing of all of this, right, is that the company was raising from investors at that time in a huge tender offer that was valued the company at nearly $90 billion, up from $30 billion, not that long before. And if, you got in early, your strike price could be the $30 billion, and then you'd make a ton of money. So, the employees were looking at millions of dollars each. And all of them believed that this would not happen if Sam was ousted. Because, Sam was the one who has the relationships with the investors. This is what he does. He is a brilliant fundraiser. So it wasn't really hard for them to decide to sign that petition because they figured our equity is worthless if Sam leaves.
Mm-hmm. Well, you really do a good job of showing the interlocking pieces of this puzzle.
Thank you.
It's fascinating.
Yeah. So what was Satya Nadella's reaction when they finally did tell him, oh yeah, we fired Sam?
Yeah, he was obviously completely shocked. And, he and Sam spoke and, Sam at that point was completely shocked himself and didn't really understand even how or why this had happened. And Satya threw his weight behind Sam, supported him, stood by him, and is a big part of the reason why the blip was so short.
Yeah.
That said, the blip really shook Microsoft, as you would expect, right? This is our biggest partner, our most important partner, surely, and this is not something we can really count on. And so you saw, not that long after, they went and built a lifeboat in the form of hiring Mustafa Suleyman and buying Inflection AI, which is a rival of OpenAI, and trying to build out their own AI capacity.
I'd be curious to hear you and Richard compare notes on where you think Microsoft stands now in having seemed to have been over-dependent upon OpenAI, and how is the relationship now?
Well, it is tense. It is tense, and it is evolving. There were tough negotiations. We've already reported at the Journal that there were tough negotiations in December as they were negotiating that carve-out for Oracle to allow Stargate to happen. And if you just step back, like I think we can all see that their incentives are not as converged as they once were. So OpenAI has become a consumer product company, which like I didn't see that coming. I'm not sure anyone did. At the beginning of this, it seemed like it was going to be an enterprise product that Microsoft was going to sell, right? So they are out in the marketplace with a very successful consumer product, and in many cases, they are competing directly with Microsoft. I don't think Microsoft, and there's all this tussling over GPUs. I mean, if you look at
now while running on Microsoft hardware in Azure data centers.
Yeah, and I don't know if you've seen Sam's X feed lately, but he's basically just like openly begging for more GPUs.
Yeah,
at this point.
The thing that led to Stargate was they had this deal with Microsoft that they were going to go through Azure and everything, and Azure's running out of capacity because they were demanding so much for the next experiment. So they finally had a point where it's like, hey, why don't you want to experiment somewhere else? Because we're selling Azure for other things too. And that really opened the door for Stargate, which was already in progress. Like they were, Oracle.
That's the $500 billion deal with Oracle. Sam Sunsan, Masayoshi Son of SoftBank. That's the president announced early in his. I guess he's still early in his tenure. Wow.
First full day of his tenure. Didn't waste any time.
Oh my God.
But it would go back to Satya Nadella being shocked. This guy, again, had just finished saying, we're betting the whole company on AI with our relationship with OpenAI that week. And he didn't know the board was going to fire him. Like then the observer seat appears and so forth. Like it was he's got to face his own board. Satya saying, how did you not know this?
Yeah.
But must also irk him that OpenAI has done so well with the consumer-facing products. The fastest-selling 100 million subscribers in 1 month. Nothing has ever done that. 2 months, okay. Nothing's ever done that before. And now, just this week, with the new image generation, you're seeing another doubling or even more of subscribers. The public vision of AI is OpenAI. I mean, that's what the public really is aware of, and it isn't a business product. So that must irk Nadella a little bit as well.
I think you're probably right, and that tension is getting more awkward by the day, especially because there's this GPU struggle underneath it all.
Where does OpenAI stand now? Because they've just made some big executive moves. I think Sam has kind of stepped back a little bit, hasn't he?
Well, in general, they revamped the board, brought a lot more experienced corporate folk.
They fired the board. They started over because that's the board that fired him, right?
Yeah.
Although Sutskever was around is he still around? He was around for quite a while.
No, he has started his own company. But he hung
everybody
around
has kind of spun off. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But look, big picture, what's happening is OpenAI is trying to turn into a more normal company. It was a very weird company, and now it's just trying to become more conventional. Mm-hmm. They're in the midst of this attempt to convert to a for-profit, or something closer to a more traditional for-profit, and that's going to require Microsoft's agreement. Right?
So talk about that. The negotiation for that cap table.
Yeah.
I mean, everything relies on it. Everything's up in the air now, right? It's all a new bet.
Totally.
So the dynamics are everybody is jockeying for their piece of that pie, right?
That's absolutely true, and that is happening right now. And so you have the tension we've been talking about between the sort of diverging strategies of these two companies and incentives of these two companies. You have the deep seek of it all, right? Which is suggesting that maybe this model of money equals success isn't quite true, right? The model that OpenAI was built on, which is like whoever raises the most money, whoever gets the most GPUs wins. And DeepSeek really called that into question.
Yep.
And then, the whole geopolitical swirl of it all adds a lot of intrigue. Like if really we're going to be building out this infrastructure in the US with building a bunch of data centers, I mean, it's not entirely clear how possible that is, but all of that is pressing in on this negotiation.
How much time did you spend talking to Sam? Were you able to interview him multiple times? Or?
Oh, yeah, multiple times and multiple coasts. I would say many hours.
Has he read the book?
He swore to me that he would never read the book because he did not even
It's good. I kind of admire Sam's really interesting because he's, at least the picture you paint of him is this kind of self-deprecating guy. Like, yeah, I was in an ashram. I did the tech bro thing, and he's got a set. And he says, I don't want you to write a book about me. That's I'm not the center of the story. And yet, at the other side of it is he's kind of cutthroat business guy. He really he does want to win.
Yeah, I mean, not only that, but he's also like pretty good at controlling a narrative.
He's
right?
very good at it. He's exceptional at it.
Right.
Well, it seems like he makes multiple narratives too. Like there's something he shows to the public, there's another thing he shows to his executive, and then this whole AGI thing seems to be a chant for recruitment more than anything else.
I think that's right. It was fascinating to interview people, in the sort of run up to the company or the early years of the company with this like litmus test of, do you believe in AGI? Was sort of one of the first questions, right, in any interview.
And if
not
you didn't,
all of them did.
forget it.
Well, not all of them did, but obviously they're going to like go for the people who believed in it. But I talked to some folks who like honestly like had amazing resumes, didn't quite believe, but if you're hanging out with all these people who do, within a few months, they make you a believer.
You get the religion.
So I suspect the interview had to do with, do you believe? Can we persuade you?
And how much will it take?
Yeah.
How many options?
How much indoctrination is necessary?
What's your strike price? Yeah. So tell us what your sense of Sam is at base. I mean, what kind of person is he really?
I think Sam is, I think Sam's true superpower is as a fundraiser. And he was the man for the moment because this particular technology needed an ungodly amount of money. And there are very few people outside of Microsoft and Google, right, or these gigantic tech companies that could do this. So the fact that he's able to like be so nimble out in the broader VC world, yet amass the amounts of money that one might normally find inside a very large company is really unique to him. And I think he's basically just a fantastic salesman.
Yeah. He's even
no wonder
reading the book.
Musk
He
are
seems
annoyed with each other then, right? Like they're kind of the same species.
Him and Musk. Yes. Oh, I do think they are the same.
Oh, interesting.
In a lot of ways. They are emotionally quite different, right? I mean, we saw the emails from the lawsuit where, Elon would toss off, like 2 minutes after someone emails him, he would toss off these angry emails like, we have no hope of beating Google. We should all just like go jump off a bridge now. And Sam is a cool customer most of the time. He does get angry. It's not like he never gets angry, but he's more self-controlled.
Among all the people that you come across now covering AI, how do I ask this? If you found yourself in a Mexican resort, happening to be with one of them,
over a
dinner,
margarita?
Yeah, or margaritas and a dinner, right? Whatever, right? Who would be, not for purposes of interviewing, but for just purposes of hanging out, who would be the most engaging or interesting to you?
I mean, the thing about Sam is he is so much fun to talk to. He just has a fascinating mind. And that's why I wanted to do the book, really, because, it's a kind of an unvarnished portrait, but he's just interesting. That's what he does in these meetings, right? He knows, he has this amazing ability to like know a lot about a million little things. So he will find something that he has in common with you, with anyone. He's done this like since he was in high school, just random technological details of things. And he will form these relationships with people based on their like shared loves that like never really go away. So yeah, I mean, he's really fun to talk to.
That's kind of about what I was about to say. Is the impression I got is it's actually of a fairly likable, certainly charismatic person that you would want to kind of spend some time with, even knowing all of the stuff behind the scenes.
Absolutely.
He comes across quite likable. Yeah.
He is likable. I mean, I don't think anyone would say that he's not actually. Like, I mean, a few people, right? But
Elon might not like him that much. Yeah.
Who's the geekiest?
Oh goodness,
that's a hard tournament.
That is a hard tournament. Probably Greg Brockman.
Yeah. Interesting.
Well, I was fascinated that I would research everyone's background, and almost every major character in this book was a math Olympiad or mathlete of some.
Were they also in the AV club?
Which I know kind of seems like a joke. It is sort of like a joke, right? Like, of course, they're all like brilliant nerds.
Yeah,
So
right.
yes, but I think it takes something like a special kind of person to want to do that, right? And all of them did it.
Yeah, there's being interested in math, and there's wearing the jersey.
And competitive. Yeah, wearing the jersey. I like it. They were wearing the jersey. But, I mentioned this last week. It seems like there are two types of people who get into this. They're philosophy majors, and then there's the math majors. And they need each other to make this happen. It's I find this a fascinating beat. And this is a must-read book. This is, I wish it were out tomorrow, because I know that people listening would love to
Pre-order,
read
folks.
it now.
Pre-order
it.
Get yours
I
now.
got my order in.
Keach Hagey, Hagey. The book is called The Optimist. Sam Altman, OpenAI, and the Race to Invent the Future, Norton Books. Not till May 20th. But you can read the excerpt last week in the Wall Street Journal, and which I highly recommend. Keach, I thank you so much for your time. I'm sorry
This is
that
just fascinating.
the Journal put you in the Witness Protection Program booth, but
It is what it is.
we were
It's fun
thrilled to
here.
be able to talk to you. And
Yes.
this was fairly short notice because we read the article and we said, got to get her on. And you've lived up to our hopes. It's a fascinating book.
Thank you
and a
so
great
much.
subject. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, it's Leo Laporte. I hope you've enjoyed this little clip from our programming at TWiT.tv. For more, visit our website, TWiT.tv, or subscribe in your favorite podcast client. There's also a link somewhere down there.
I'm not a human being, not into this animal scene. I'm an intelligent machine.